21 miles. That is the width of the narrowest point of the Strait of Hormuz. 21 miles of water separating Oman from Iran, and through it flows roughly a fifth of the world's entire oil supply every single day. If you were designing a choke point to hold the modern global economy hostage, you could not improve on this. And yet the Strait's power over human affairs did not begin with tankers or OPEC or petrochemical politics. It has been the most strategically consequential body of water in the world for at least 3,000 years, and almost nobody in the West can find it on a map. The story begins not with oil, but with incense. Before crude petroleum made the Persian Gulf indispensable to industrial civilization, it was already indispensable to ancient civilization for a different reason. The frankincense and myrrh trades of South Arabia and the Horn of Africa moved northward through the Gulf toward Mesopotamia, Egypt, and eventually Rome. The strait was the throat through which those luxury goods passed. Control the throat, control the trade. Control the trade, control the revenue. Control the revenue, control everything else. Every power that has ever dominated this region has understood this logic intuitively, even before they could articulate it. The earliest civilizations to grasp the strait's importance were not Persians or Arabs. They were Dilmanites, a Bronze Age people based in what is now Bahrain, who turned the Gulf into a commercial highway around 3000 BC, connecting the Indus Valley civilization to Mesopotamia. Dilmun appears in Sumerian mythology as a paradise, a sacred land. That reputation was not accidental. When a location makes everyone wealthy, mythology tends to follow. Then Persia arrived, and everything changed in scale. The Achaemenid Empire, the first Persian empire, did not treat the Gulf as a trade route. It treated it as a lake. Under Darius I, Persian satrapies stretched along both shorelines. The strait was not a boundary between civilizations. It was a domestic waterway. Persian naval forces patrolled it. Persian administrators taxed whatever moved through it. The first recorded naval expedition through the strait was commissioned by Darius himself around 510 BC, a reconnaissance mission to map the coasts of India. He sent a Greek captain named Scylax to do the job, which says something about how the Achaemenid Empire worked. They were comfortable using the best talent available regardless of origin. When Alexander the Great destroyed that empire, one of his first priorities was not Persia's heartland. It was the Gulf. He was already planning a circumnavigation of Arabia and a consolidation of the maritime trade routes when he died in Babylon in 323 BC. His admiral Nearchus had already sailed the route from the Indus to the Gulf. The Macedonians understood what the Persians had understood. The strait was the lock on the door to everything east of it. The Parthians, who replaced the Macedonians, built an empire whose economic engine was transit trade. Silk from China, spices from India, incense from Arabia, all of it funneled through the Gulf, through the strait, into the Mediterranean world where Rome paid extraordinary prices for Eastern luxury. The Parthian Empire's longevity was in part a function of this geographic advantage. They did not need to conquer trade partners. They needed only to control the corridor. For 400 years they did exactly that. Rome never solved the Parthian problem because Rome never solved the geographic problem. Roman attempts to open alternative routes through the Red Sea partially worked, but never fully replaced the Gulf corridor. The strait sat just beyond Roman reach, on the wrong side of the Euphrates, generating wealth for a rival empire that Rome could fight, but could never fundamentally defeat. When the Sassanid Persians replaced the Parthians in 224 AD, they inherited the same geographic logic and weaponized it more deliberately. The Sassanids controlled a port city called Hormuz, built on the Iranian mainland near the strait's entrance. This was not the island that carries the name today. It was a continental city that commanded the Chokepoint. They used it as an administrative center for Gulf commerce and as a naval base from which to project power southward into Arabia and eastward toward India. The Sassanid Empire fought its great wars with Rome and Byzantium in the north and west, but its wealth was generated in the south and east through the strait. Then came Islam, and the geography did not change, but the civilization operating within it transformed completely. The Arab conquests of the 7th century destroyed the Sassanid Empire and absorbed the Gulf and the Strait into the new Islamic Caliphate. What happened next is one of the most remarkable commercial explosions in pre-modern history. Arab and Persian Muslim merchants, operating under a shared religious framework that facilitated trust across enormous distances, built trade networks that connected West Africa to Song Dynasty China by the 10th century. The Gulf was the central artery, the Strait was the pulse point. Ships carrying Chinese porcelain, Indian spices, African ivory, and Central Asian metalwork moved through those 21 miles continuously. Siraf, a port city on the Iranian shore of the Gulf, became one of the wealthiest cities in the Islamic world, purely on the basis of its position relative to the Strait. The merchant communities of this era developed financial instruments, letters of credit, partnerships, insurance-like agreements that anticipated the mechanisms of modern global finance by half a millennium. They did it because the distances involved required it. You cannot send a ship from Basra to Canton and back without some mechanism for trust and deferred payment. The Strait of Hormuz did not just move goods, it incubated economic modernity. The Mongol invasions of the 13th century devastated the continental cities. Siraf was already declining before the Mongols arrived, but the island of Hormuz, sitting in the mouth of the strait, thrived precisely because it could not easily be sacked. An island is a fortress by default. The rulers of Hormuz retreated to the island from the mainland in the 13th century and built a small independent kingdom that operated improbably as a neutral commercial hub in the middle of perpetual regional conflict. Everyone needed the strait to function. Everyone therefore had an interest in the kingdom of Hormuz continuing to exist. For nearly 2 centuries, Hormuz was one of the most cosmopolitan places on Earth, its markets full of Persian, Arab, Indian, Chinese, East African, and Central Asian merchants simultaneously. Ibn Battuta visited in the 14th century and described it as extremely hot and relentlessly commercial. The Moroccan traveller's framing was not enthusiastic, but the commercial point was accurate. Then Portugal arrived, and the world changed. In 1507, Afonso de Albuquerque sailed a Portuguese fleet into the Gulf and seized the island of Hormuz. He did not do this because he was interested in the island itself. He did it because he had understood something that would define the next 2 centuries of European colonial history. If you control the choke points, you do not need to control the territories. The Strait of Hormuz, together with Aden at the entrance to the Red Sea, Goa on the Indian coast, and Malacca in Southeast Asia, gave Portugal a stranglehold over the entire Eurasian maritime trade system. They did not build an empire of territory. They built an empire of strategic nodes. This was unprecedented in history. Previous empires had held the strait as part of larger territorial possessions. Portugal held it specifically to collect tolls. Every ship passing through paid. Every merchant operating in those waters required a Portuguese-issued pass. The Kingdom of Hormuz continued to exist as a vassal state, its local rulers still nominally in power, but the economic surplus flowed to Lisbon. Portugal had turned a geographic fact into a revenue mechanism with a clarity and efficiency that is almost modern in its design. It lasted 100 years. In 1622, a joint Anglo-Persian force expelled the Portuguese from Hormuz. The English East India Company provided the ships. The Safavid Persian Shah Abbas I provided the army. The arrangement was explicitly transactional. The English got trading rights, the Persians got their coastline back. It was one of the first significant joint military operations between a European trading company and an Asian state, and it set a template for what the next 3 centuries of European commercial expansion would look like. Not simply conquest. Partnership, when partnership was cheaper than conquest. Shah Abbas moved the commercial center from the island to the mainland, building the city of Bandar Abbas, which still bears his name and still serves as Iran's primary Gulf port. The island of Hormuz declined into the military ruin it largely remains today, but the strait itself did not decline. It never has. The 19th century brought Britain more formally into the Gulf. not through trade partnerships this time, but through treaties that turned the Arab sheikdoms of the southern shore into British protectorates. The Trucial states, the Omani Sultanate, Kuwait, all came under British influence through agreements that were nominally about suppressing piracy, but were functionally about maintaining British dominance of the sea route to India. The strait sat at the western end of a strategic corridor that ran from Suez, through Aden, through Hormuz to Bombay. British imperial strategy was largely a matter of keeping that corridor open. Oil changed everything in the 20th century, but it changed the stakes, not the logic. The same geographic fact that made Hormuz valuable for incense and silk and spices made it valuable for petroleum. The Gulf states that sit behind the strait, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Iran, the UAE, Qatar, collectively hold more than half the world's proven oil reserves. All of that oil exits through 21 miles of water. The strait is not a route to resources. It is the exit valve for resources that power industrial civilization. This concentration of consequence in one narrow waterway has made every major power on Earth develop a position on the strait. The United States Navy has maintained a continuous presence in the Gulf since 1980. That presence expanded dramatically after the Iranian Revolution of 1979 and the subsequent tanker war of the 1980s, when Iran and Iraq attacked each other's oil shipping and the United States began escorting Kuwaiti tankers under American flags. The logic of that military deployment has not meaningfully changed since. American aircraft carriers in the Gulf are there because the strait is there, and the strait cannot be allowed to close. Iran has never forgotten that it sits on the northern shore of that strait and can, if sufficiently provoked, threaten to shut it down. Iranian military doctrine includes extensive planning for strait closure scenarios involving mines, missile batteries, swarms of small, fast attack boats, and anti-ship missiles positioned on both the mainland coast and the island of Qashm. Whether Iran could actually close the strait for any meaningful length of time against a determined American military response is debated by strategists. That debate is itself part of the deterrence. The threat does not need to be executable to have political value. It needs only to be credible enough to raise the cost of confrontation. This is the world's most precisely calibrated standoff. Iran cannot afford the economic consequences of actually closing the strait, since roughly a third of its own export revenue flows through it. The United States cannot afford the economic consequences of the strait closing, since a 20% global oil supply disruption would cascade through every economy on Earth within weeks. The Gulf states that sell oil through it cannot afford for it to close. The Asian economies, China, Japan, South Korea, India, that import most of the oil that flows through it, cannot afford for it to close. Nobody can afford it. Everyone therefore maintains their positions, demonstrates their capabilities, and ensures the other party understands the costs of miscalculation, and the ships keep moving. 21 miles of water, carrying a fifth of the world's oil, watched by 3 satellite networks, patrolled by multiple navies, targeted by multiple missile systems, insured at premiums that fluctuate with the political temperature of a region that has not known sustained peace in living memory. And through it all, the tankers move. They moved through the Bronze Age under sail. They moved through the medieval era under Arab captains who could navigate by stars from Basra to Canton. They moved through the colonial era under European flags. They move now under the tracking systems of a dozen Coast Guard agencies, their positions updated by satellite every few minutes. The strait does not care about any of this. It is a geographic fact. The tectonic forces that positioned Iran to the north and Oman to the south made no calculations about oil prices or imperial strategy. They simply moved the plates. Everything that followed, the Bronze Age trade, the Persian empires, the Arab commercial networks, the Portuguese Chokepoint strategy, the British protectorates, the American carrier groups, the Iranian missile batteries, is humanity's response to a gap in the landscape. That gap has never stopped mattering. The question every generation asks about Hormuz is whether this time, finally, the technology or the politics or the economics will make it less critical. Alternative pipelines have been built. Liquefied natural gas changes some of the routing. Renewable energy eventually changes the oil calculus entirely, but not yet, not close to yet. For now, the tankers move through 21 miles of water and the world holds its breath in a way that it has held its breath, for different reasons, for 3,000 years. Some geographic facts are permanent, this one is still running. This video is brought to you by the Paladin Learn History app. Scan the QR code to learn more history.